see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, and possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, Liam, my little alien friend, and thank you, listener, for tuning into this episode of the Oracles with James Tyson. It's me, James, and you know, Liam, we're going to be talking about you people, you beings, you little grays. Well, grays and many others, because today I'm bringing you Nancy Tremaine. Nancy has come forward, well, she came forward a few years back, but one of the things that I really wanted her to come by and talk about is not only her first book, which was a symbiosis that came out a few years back, but we're going to talk about her newest book, this Preordained. In our conversations, we're going to talk about what happened to her back in 1961 and why it took so long for her to come forward, going from 1961 to literally 50 years later in 2011. We are going to discuss almost like that would be an awakening. There was a 50-year cover on what she knew and what she remembered, as well as one of the policemen who were involved in the incident when she was a young girl, and that policeman did attend. Unfortunately, Chief Lee Bagall passed last year, which was pretty hard for Nancy, because we touch on that too, because that was the one person that really, other than her friend who's also passed, who, when we'll discuss this, taken aboard a spaceship in 1961 in their neighborhood. The police did witness it, as well as their parents and a good chunk of the neighborhood that came out and looked at this thing. And we'll find out why she believes she was taken. We talk about the bigger picture, where she is now. We touch, obviously, a little bit on why her and why her friend went with her. We talk about the guy who is running the ship, the pilot she refers to as Mr., a being that she describes as reptilian, and the other beings on these ships that, well, I say ships because this wasn't the only time that she was taken. We compare it to almost like the Galactic Federation on Star Trek. Their crew was made up of numbers of different types of beings. Nancy first came forward publicly with her story in September of 2011, like I said. Now, despite the realization of how it would affect her life and those around her, she has spent the last 9 years sharing these messages and helping others to come forward with their own stories. Her new book, Preordained, is an autobiography of Nancy's past, present, and what we'll be talking about, a little bit of her ongoing life. I shouldn't say her full ongoing life because the book's finished, but her ongoing life is not. She quotes the late Jim Marrs, who is a journalist and best-selling author who first coined the term the Mental Boggle Point. This point, he describes, is the point at which even the most open-minded are confronted with information that is so unbelievable that the mind succumbs to a rubber band effect, snapping back to the beliefs that are more comfortable and socially acceptable. It's Nancy's belief that the past, present, and future are all one and the same. The pattern is a circle that repeats itself in a predictable manner. It's a circle of life itself, and it's what she believes gave birth to humanity. Now, during a sleep state, Nancy wrote the words, "Realities or illusions are part of the delusion we have created. We are living in a delusional illusion of our making. We are all players in this fictional theater we are performing for our creators. The stage is set at birth, and our performance has begun." Very, very interesting. Back in August of 2019, Nancy entered a state of, I think it's called Samadhi. Well, during Samadhi, the mind is turned off, and the physical world disappears along with its conceptions of space and time. And the universe itself is perceived as an illusion without intrinsic reality. The ego dissolved, revealing the oneness of creation and the existence of a cosmic mind. When somebody enters this state even once, a deep internal transformation results and annihilates all patterns of reality. Her life has taken a deeper meaning as she attempts to honor this oneness, seeing the world through new eyes, with an even deeper longing to connect with every living thing, accepting that her life and all life is preordained. Every minute detail and all the obstacles are meant to be. A message she still receives is, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. And it's a constant reminder that it's all meant to be. And her book, Preordained, vows to take you to that mental boggle point over and over again. Well, I'm fascinated, and I already know how this turns out. Most likely because it's all preordained. Just like you listening to this, it is something you were supposed to do. Yeah, think about that. I'm going to go get Nancy and let her tell you her story. Nancy, how are you today?
I am wonderful, and I'm thrilled to be here with you, James. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for dropping by. This is fascinating. Your book, Symbiosis, and your second book, Preordained, are absolutely intriguing. When I think about somebody like you, and we discussed a little bit off air about you being a very high vibration empath, and your ability to affect things like my computer system before we recorded, and light bulbs and things as you walk into a room. Talking about people like that, and you with an ET experience, take me back to where this all started. Okay. When did this happen?
Well, it began for me in the summer of 1961. I was 12 years old, and it was in Novi, Michigan. And Novi at the time was just a small village. It was just woods and trees, and homes were just starting to be built. So it was very undeveloped, a lot of undeveloped land. And I was at my girlfriend Cindy's house, who lived very close to me. My father could actually watch me go to her front door from our front door. It was that close. So we were inside her home playing, and her father hollered for us to come outside, and we could hear that there was urgency in his voice. And when we walked out that front door, our lives were forever changed at that moment. There was a large silver ship hovering above a tree between our two homes, slightly above the tree. And it was totally silent, but it had a large, wide band of pulsating or rotating lights that were red, green, and white, rotating or flashing. They went so fast you couldn't tell. The ship was completely silent, and neighbors started to come out of their homes at this point, scattered. And take our eyes off this what I thought of was a flying saucer. And the funny thing was Cindy's father was adjusting a small tripod telescope, if that tells you how long he'd already been watching it before we got out there. But he asked us if we wanted to look through it, and I wondered why, because the ship was literally right in front of us. I mean, right in front of us. It couldn't have been any closer. It would have been on us. Then we watched as a police car was coming down and turned in front of where we were all standing. Me, Cindy, her father, her younger brother, and one of the neighbor men. And they coasted. They actually coasted the police car to a stop. You could hear the gravel road. That was the only thing you could hear. They both got out of the car and they walked with their front to they never turned their backs on the ship. They walked up with the incline where we were all standing. And I remember that I grabbed the arm or leg of the one police officer, and I tried to voice 3 simple words which came out in slow motion. Is this real? It was so hard to get those 3 words out. I had to know that he was seeing, and everybody else was seeing what I was seeing. I couldn't make sense of it. He never said a word. And then we watched as a car started coming towards us down Meadowbrook Road, which is the road that my home is on. And this car is putting itself closer and closer to the ship, almost bringing itself underneath the ship. And I know I was wondering what is going to happen when... Well, the beam of light came out of the bottom of the ship, and it was aimed at the car. It was aimed at the hood of the car. And when that beam of light, and it went down slowly, and when it hit that hood of the car was immobilized at that point. And that's when I started jumping up and down. I don't know if it was hysterics or what made me do it, but I started jumping up and down and I was yelling, over here, over here. And Cindy is grabbing me and telling me to stop it. And at that point, the ship tilted on its side and it spoke to me. It said, we see you. And even at the age of 12 years old, I realized that this ship was alive. This was a living thing. I grabbed the police officer again at this point and I said, do something. And he glanced down very quickly at me. And it was the first time I'd ever seen fear in a man's face. And I knew at that moment that I would never feel safe again in this world. And then the next thing I know, I'm at home with my dad, who is kneeling on the kitchen floor, and he's holding me, and he's telling me, you're okay, you're home, you're safe, I love you. And I glanced at the clock, and my father was a World War II combat soldier. Our home was run like a boot camp. I was never allowed out past 7:30 or dusk. I mean spankings. And it was getting dark out. It was 10 minutes to 9. And I couldn't understand why my dad was so glad to have me home, and it's almost dark outside. I asked him if I could call my mother, who had taken a part-time job 3 days a week from 5 to 9. And I called her, and she said she was going to get off in 10 minutes. And she said, I heard about, I don't know what she called it. She said, customers have come in the store and told me about it. And that night, my father silenced me, and he silenced me. He shook me, and he asked me if I understood what he was telling me, that I was never to speak of this again. And I understood. So I knew that I had to store all of this information in the back of my mind. And that night, and many nights after that, I stood on the headboard of my bed so that I could look out my bedroom window at the exact spot where that ship had hovered, and I would chant over and over again, please come back and get me. Well, who was I asking to come back and get me, and why was I saying that? And they must have left me with, I had no idea that I had been on board at this point. None, not for 50 years. But they must have left me with very positive, loving feelings for me to long for them the way that I did. Cindy and I never spoke about it. For 50 years, it simply wasn't spoken of, not with therapists. And I would tell several therapists, there's something inside me that has to come out. I need to be hypnotized. But they didn't believe in hypnotism, or insurance didn't cover it. And they would give me one diagnosis after another. And Cindy and I had very unhealthy lives for that 50 years. Cindy tried to commit suicide several times, in and out of hospitals. Hardcore alcoholic. Between the two of us, we were married 7 times.
Wow.
Mostly abusive relationships. Traumatic stress disorder, panic attacks. But I was on self-destruct, and so was Cindy for those 50 years. And then I'm going to fast forward here to September 1st of 2011, exactly 50 years later. I'm playing on the computer, and I see the word ufology. I'd never heard that word, seen that word, didn't know what ufology or ufologist, didn't even know there were people that studied this kind of thing. But he happened to be a 55-year MUFON state director many years prior. He'd been out of MUFON for years. And I wrote to him, and I said, I might have a story to tell you that you'd be interested in. Well, he called me, and just a few days later, I met with him. He came armed with several books and pictures of aliens for me to look at, and asked me if anything looked... I looked at every picture of every alien, and I said, no, nothing. I said, but I do draw a picture of the ship every year or two, and I quickly discard it. And I've done that for my sanity. He said, would you draw it for me now? And I drew it. Like in 2 minutes, I had drawn the ship, the car that was immobilized, the beam of light coming out, the police, Cindy's father, Mr. Lutz, with the telescope. And it's in the first book. My drawings are drawn by the 12-year-old Nancy that still occupies this vessel. He asked me lots of questions about why it was dark when I got home and if I'd thought about that. And he mentioned missing time. I'd never heard those words either. Everything was new to me. But he knew that I needed the answers, that this was haunted me all these years. And he found a regression therapist who had done 3 or 4 regressions, but never with someone who could possibly have been an abductee. And we went through 5 regressions together, just the 3 of us. I called us the 3 Musketeers. But after that first regression, I didn't remember, and I didn't think I'd be able to be regressed. I thought I was too smart. But at the end of that first regression, I remember chanting over and over again, my body is waving and rumbling to the low hum of the ship. And it was. I was in some kind of an electrical wave of some kind, and it felt absolutely beautiful. I didn't want to leave this wave. And after I got out of that regression, they encouraged me to go after Cindy, the other little girl, in 1961. And at this point, I had 3 illustrations that I had drawn. The one that I drew every year, of course, of the ship and the police, the car being immobilized, and then one of me jumping up and down, yelling, over here, and then the last one was of me going up in the wave. So I had those with me. And I went to Cindy's house. I called Cindy, and hardcore alcoholic, and I prayed to God that she would be sober. And ironically, she was. Can't remember. I really can't remember any other times that Cindy was that sober, to be honest with you. And she knew. I said, we have to go to the bedroom. She was married. We went in the spare bedroom. I shut the door. I was armed with my illustrations. I told her to sit on the bed. And one by one, when I pulled out the first illustration, I laid it on the bed. She looked at it and her whole body started to shake. And she said, "What are you doing?" And I thought to myself, if I have to tie her to this bed, I'm going. She's going to listen to me and she's going to look at these pictures. I said, "Cindy, this is really important. Please." I pulled out the second picture and she looked at me and she looked at the picture and she said, "You were missing. You were gone. We couldn't find you. I think my dad went down to your dad, or he called your dad." Now, I'm hearing this for the first time because I still had no idea that I was on board the ship. And I'm thinking to myself, she's telling me that I was missing? What the hell? It just blew my mind. So from 2011, from that day until 2015, August, we shared our memories. And Cindy had one regression which pretty much mirrored mine. And she was found dead on her kitchen floor, August 2015. She literally drank herself to death. That was 9 months after her regression, her one and only regression. And thank God that she had that regression. I have the recording of it. I recorded the entire regression. I want to go back to September of Awakening. The following month of October, and Cindy had mentioned to me during our conversations, this is very important, she had mentioned that there had been a military investigation, and that was way over my head. I couldn't even, this was way too much for me. But after she was found dead on her kitchen floor, I went for a walk in the park behind my apartment, and she spoke to me. And she said, those men, they came to your house. They wanted to talk to you. Your father threatened to kill them. And I knew exactly what men she meant. And I knew that I would have to go down a new rabbit hole. And that's when I ended Symbiosis, because it was just too much with her death. But I had been speaking to the former police chief since October of 2011. So within a 1 month period, all three of us had awakened. It was like we were all programmed to awaken and start speaking of the event. The chief shared valuable information, but I never mentioned the military investigation until after Cindy's death. And Cindy and I...
Sorry, what was the chief's name?
Chief Lee Begall. Capital B, small e, big G-O-L-E. And if you Google, all you have to do is Google Police Chief Lee Begall. You will see that he is an icon. He's the one who started, the police had to have a 4-year degree. He was in 2 wars. He pre-law degree from Canada, and he passed the bar exam in Michigan. This is not just any police chief. He just died on March 8th. I went to his funeral. But he was like a father to me all those years. And I've recorded, and he allowed me to record our conversations. And he was like a father to me. And he put his reputation on the line for me.
Take your time. It's okay. I know.
I would love to share some of the information that the police chief Lee Begall shared with me. I actually dedicated Preordained to him for daring, for sharing, and for caring enough to put his reputation on the line. He never had any children, and you can hear in some of our conversations that he is like a father to me, and I'm little girl Nancy talking sometimes. There is actually a street named after him in Novi. We spoke for 7 years, and I'm going to share now some of the information that he gave me. And he spoke to the Detroit Historical Society. He did an interview, we both did, with the Detroit Historical Society in 2017. And at the end of the interview, I knew that interview would never make it to the internet. And it hasn't. But I recorded the whole thing, so... He said they came in from Arizona or New Mexico making an official investigation. They came in prepared to disbelieve because things like that don't happen. He said they wanted to talk to everybody. He added, they knew how to talk. And when he said that, I asked him, what did he mean? And you could tell by his answer, he said, well, they provided what help they could to jog my memory. Now, why would they need to jog his memory of something that had just occurred? The word jog means to remind someone of something, and it also means to push, shove, or nudge. And you can bet that's exactly what they did. Those men went door to door. And I know why. They wanted to scare the hell out of everyone, and they did. They scared us silent for 50 years, and they wanted pictures. And you can bet your butt that there were pictures taken, because that ship hovered against a clear blue sky for over 20 minutes. Mr. Lutz had enough time, Cindy's father, to get a telescope set up. The police chief talks about sending the police to the scene. And he talks about the car that was immobilized. And he told me who was in that car. His name was Martin Cohn, and he was driving an unmarked police car, which put 3 police officers on the scene. And Chief Lee Begall at the police station taking phone calls from panicked citizens for over 20 minutes. One of the police officers, and I believe it's the one that I grabbed the arm of, is named Dick Faulkner. He turned FBI. Ironically, Cindy married his younger brother, Warren. You can't make this stuff up. But Faulkner did go on to become FBI, and I did approach Faulkner at Chief Begall's 95th birthday party, and I tried to get him to speak about it, and he acted like he didn't know what I was talking about. I said, well, Chief Begall knows, and Martin Cohn, no. He just turned and walked away from me. At some point during the party, I was talking with the chief about the incident, and it was a private, just the two of us talking. And Faulkner came up behind him, and he said, UFO, real smart ass, and then he said, we buried it. And he looked me straight in the eyes as he said, we buried it. We buried it, didn't we, Chief? Just gave me the creeps. I wrote to the Detroit Historical Society several times asking them, when are you going to post that? When are you going to post that? They have never responded me to this day. You know what the definition of a historical society is? It's an organization dedicated to preserving, collecting, and researching. These societies are created as a way to keep future generations aware of what's going on. So apparently this Detroit Historical Society has forgotten its job. But as soon as this COVID is calmed down and libraries are opened again, I am going to find a way to go in with all of my recordings and play them of former police chief Lee Begall in Novi, because he is an icon in Novi. In fact, 2020, just prior to his death, there's a short interview with him. He was 99. He almost made it to 100 years old. So that's how well respected he was. He was police officer of the year last year in Novi, just before his death.
But he was still a policeman at the age of 85, wasn't he? Didn't he retire at 85?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was working part-time. He wanted to retire, and they told him to. They wanted him to stay, and he did stay part-time. Yes, and the last 2 years of his life, he was living with family because he got to the point where his mind, he had good days. He had good days and he had bad days, and I just lived for the good days when his memories were so clear, and he wanted to hear about what happened on board, and he believed and he knew that I was telling the truth. And he said one time he said, "Well, your father is lucky that you weren't gone forever." He validated me in every way. So losing Cindy and losing Police Chief Lee Boggle did me in. I had a minor breakdown after Boggle's death, and of course after Cindy's. These are emotional breakdowns, and all they are is they're emotional overloads. And empaths can only take so much, and they're on overload, and they need to get away. I do what I call locking myself into my apartment. I live alone. I'm a loner. I shut the doors, lock everything up, and close the curtains, and I close myself in, and I to get my energy back. Humanity takes so much out of me. They exhaust me.
It's really hard for you to, or maybe hard to answer this, but if you were to go back to the girl who was, 12 years old, did energies bother you back then? Or do you remember if you had the same intuitive feelings back then?
Well, I know that I was the family. I'm the middle child, and everybody laughed and said, "Well, we got to tiptoe around Nancy because she'll cry at anything," and my dad would say, "You've seen this episode of Lassie 20 times, he lives," and I'd still cry.
So as an intuitive, like now, and again, you are a very high vibration person. You're what we call an intuitive, basically a psychic. It's you are affected, and you affect things around you. You were saying off air that you actually sometimes will see a fuzzy energy on the walls. You can walk into a room and blow a light out. You can stand beside somebody's computer and screw up their computer. This is very common with people who have a higher vibration. And I was just curious. The reason I asked, I was curious if it was something that maybe occurred on craft, or it was something that you had coming in. And do you know if your friend was also that way? And even maybe Lee, the chief, was? Because, why? Well, he wasn't taken, was he? But your friend was. And were both of you taken because of your vibration? I was just, curious.
Well, I'm not 100% positive if Chief wasn't taken.
Okay.
And Cindy was only on board because when they got me and took me up in that wave, I wouldn't shut up. I was placed on a table, and all I kept screaming was, "Get Cindy too, get Cindy too. I don't want to be alone." And I was just not going to shut up. And they brought her on board, and she talks about it in her regression, to appease me. And they placed her in a cylindrical clear tube suspended above me. And I've drawn a picture of that also in the book. And we didn't speak in the ship, but I saw her beautiful blue eyes. We did make eye contact, and she was put down, back. And my regression therapist asked her why she was on board, and these are her words. She said, "I believe I was there because Nancy needed me. I believe I was there because God wanted me to be with her." And I was listening to her say these words to the regression therapist. I had to leave the room because I realized how much she loved me. And if it weren't for her, I would probably have never gone after the chief about the military investigation. But when I was on the ship, and I'm not going to go into all the details about what occurred on the ship, I was given, they placed a cylindrical rod in my right hand, and it was a metal rod about 6 inches long. And there's 3 grays, and they're staring at the wall, not at me or the wand. And I realized, after I'd drawn this illustration, I'm looking, and I realized that what they're doing is they are monitoring what they are putting in my hand. It's in this wand. In 1961, they were giving me the information and the words that I am speaking now and have been speaking since 2011. And they're still slowly, I'm giving information, and Preordained is just, it's far from a UFO book. It's how far I've grown and come. But when I looked out the window of the ship in 1961, when I first got on board, I know I'm jumping all over, but I wanted to answer your question. I looked out the window, which was the red, white, and green flashing lights. It was nothing but a window on the inside of the ship. That was windows all the way around. And I had to stand on my tiptoes. I was so tiny to see out the window. And when I looked out, I could see the tree that we were hovering above, and I could see Mr. Lutz, Cindy's father, with the telescope. The police were gone. The neighbors were gone. The police car was gone. There was no one there except Cindy's father. So, you tell me.
Yeah, I wonder if, I just think if everybody's gone, what were you looking at? Were you, it does baffle me too. It's like, we'll call it cloaked. Was the craft actually still visible to everybody on the ground, or was it gone? Did they perceive it was gone and everyone left? That's really interesting.
Yes, and I was taken to stay with strangers after that. My mom, I remember her driving me to stay with these complete strangers. And she left me there. It seemed like forever, but it was probably only a few days until things cooled down. And my father was flown to California. My father was hydraulic engineer in the aerospace division of Vickers in Michigan. And he'd never gone on a business trip in his life. And right after this, they flew him to California on business. And they offered him a job in Australia. Wasn't that nice?
Yeah. We're trying to get you out of town right now. And let's hide your daughter for a bit too. You said, excuse me, you said when you were when you had that little cylindrical piece of metal in your hand, there were 3 grays. Yes. So grays, we know now, it's the common term for the common ET types, the big headed grays. Yeah, I just called them the worker bees because I really didn't feel, they weren't mean and they weren't trying to hurt me. They also did a laparoscopy, the needle in the navel, and they told me that they wanted to see inside. Now, the reason they used those words is they couldn't tell me they were going to harvest eggs because I wouldn't have understood that at 12. Mm-hmm. But I would understand that they wanted to see inside. And the one gray got up real close and in my eyes, and he said, we're going to, because I was like a maniac screaming, we're going to do what we're going to do, and you're going to go home and you're going to be safe. And at that, I knew at that point that they meant business, and I just relented. And any pain, there was no pain. Of course, I perceived it as pain because I watched the needle going into my stomach. Mm-hmm. But afterwards, the nice one on board, I call her the nice one, she was the only female on board, helped me get dressed, and she walked me back to what I call the pilot, who looked just like a human, anyone's father. And I said, Mister, why did you let them hurt me?
And he said, your pain was perceived. He said, I want you to find the positive in every perception. There is a positive in everything. In everything. And to this day, I still remember his words no matter how bad things get. And I always can look back and see, yes, there was positive. There is. And this is Earth School. Everything's not supposed to be wonderful. This is a learning time. We all have a mission here.
The female, would she describe her?
Okay. She was more human looking. She had emotions. She had empathy. She babied me. She helped me get dressed. I felt love from her. And I realize now the females on board are nurturers. I learned this later on, another time when I was on board. But the females are nurturers, and the men run the show. And every time I say that, women get upset, but these are my experiences, and this is what I've experienced. And it's just like God wanted, women to be the nurturers. And like I said, men run the show on board.
So the pilots were they wearing the coveralls with the silver coveralls, or were they just like?
No, he just was wearing just regular clothes. It didn't look like I don't remember it appearing to be a uniform, but he looked just like anyone's father. At 12 years old, every man over 20 is an old man. So
yeah,
I didn't realize at the time, but he was reptilian, and I would find that out after my third regression, when I was made to draw a picture. And they put these images in my head. When I say they, all my messages and information come from the collective mind or from Mr. Mr. is the name that I gave the pilot on board ship, because we addressed men as Mr. back then. Every man was a Mr.
So you say you had a couple of regressions in, you determined this guy was reptilian. Mm-hmm. And the perception that you were when you were looking at him, you saw him as, we'll say, human, mm-hmm. but that was almost like it was given to you as a perception. This is what I look like, or this is what I want you to see me as opposed to what you really look like.
Exactly, because after I drew this picture of this reptilian being in a cape, he told me to write beneath the picture. He said, write these words, see me as I am. So there it is, see me as I am. So he is reptilian. I do not see him in reptilian form. Now he is in energy. He's an energy. He's a thought. He's a knowing. He's a message. In fact, the last message I got from him, I really love. He said, sometimes a woman has to act like a man to be treated like a lady, because I wasn't taken seriously for a long time. I don't know how to say this without sounding conceited, but I was an attractive woman, and it's very hard for men, especially, I went to a few MUFON meetings, and I think it was difficult for a lot of these men to get past me as a woman. And I asked one of the people at MUFON, I said, am I credible? And his words were, credible? You're incredible. We don't even have a frame of reference for your stories.
Wow.
Even with my pregnancy pictures, even with the tracks that were left behind my apartment, and a farmer came out to investigate them, there's no way that those could have been placed there. Even with the sighting of an orange orb, even with one of my best friends is an attorney. He saw me pregnant with the hybrid. They didn't want to even hear. I had recordings of Police Chief Lee Bagall. Hello? I asked at one of the meetings, do you want to hear? No. Instead, they had speakers get up, and I'm 70 years old. I'm telling it like it is. They were so boring that literally the people would go to sleep. It was all I could do to stay awake. They were talking about, they think they saw a ship. I mean, nothing close to what I had. Nothing. But, and it just broke my heart that I wasn't being believed and I wasn't being heard, and I just felt like I was screaming until I finally reached out to Dr. Ray Hernandez with the Foundation Free, and he gave me a list of therapists that had volunteered free. And one of them was only a little over a half an hour drive from where I'm at, and I wrote to her, desperately reaching out to her, and beautiful woman, Kathy Braun, and she wrote me back, and she said, send me your manuscript. First, all I had was Symbiosis at that time, and it wasn't even a book yet. It wasn't even out. Send me your manuscript and one of your radio interviews. I believe I had a radio interview. I did. Okay. And she immediately got back. She must have really listened and read fast because she made an appointment for that Saturday. And when I got there, she said, well, I read your book and I've listened to your interview and I believe you. And when she said, I believe you, she knew. And Linda Moulton Howe called me, and she knew. So I had very important people and that knew, and Grant Cameron believed me. So I had important people that believed me. I didn't need MUFON. Although they have come a long way now. They are trying to get beyond Bigfoot and the sightings and getting into what this is all about.
What do you think it's all about?
Well, it's about a cosmic oneness. It's about the I know. It's the I know, it's not the I believe. It's the oneness of mind, body, and soul. And this is how we evolve. I believe, and this is where I'm at now in my progression, that we are all creating our realities. We are creating this, and we are creating how we perceive our realities. Our perceptions are perceived by us. And I have this new overwhelming appreciation of nature and the planet. And it's ironic that it's 2020 now, which means vision. And we are seeing racism for what it is. And this is a great time to reach out and get other, and we've got the audience. We experiencers have the audience's attention now so that they can hear us.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's come along, Nancy. We've in about the last 15 years, really with just the start of a television series like Ghost Hunters, people started thinking, there might be something on the other side. There might be some kind of life after death. There may be a ghost. And that then opened up, to ancient aliens. That opened up to all sorts of what we call the woo-woo side of things. And people now coming out and saying, this happened to me when I was a kid in 1950. This happened to me when I was a kid in 1972. I've had regressions. One of the psychics that I'd go to conferences with, Skeeter Wellhouse, she would show up at Alien Con in LA, and she did regressions into missing time.
Wow.
And yes, she was interfered with because every so often a being would show up saying, you can't do this, and then a higher vibration being would come in and say, no, you should let her do it. And there'd be this cosmic argument in a small tent at a function in LA. And it was fascinating listening to the people come out of there going, yeah, I just remembered that, I was on craft, or I remember actually seeing, this is what I did see, so I'm not crazy.
Yes.
These people are coming out of the woodwork now because their friends and family can look at them like they're not crazy.
One of my chapters is coming out as an experiencer and how difficult it is once you let that genie out of the bottle. There are times that you're going to wish you could put it back because you're forever, your life is forever changed. And positive stories like mine are less likely to be heard because people love fear. It takes years for an experiencer to find the positive and understand that we volunteered for this mission to be here and to be experiencing all of these emotions. And that's exactly what the reptilian beings are doing. They are studying the emotions of love, fear, rage, and empathy is the number one thing that they're interested in right now because empathy is waning. Research has been done, and the United States ranks 7th. It's a one-of-its-kind, you can Google, a one-of-its-kind study done on empathy, and first of its kind. And the United States ranks behind Korea and there were several other countries, 7th. And then Dr. Sarah Conrath did a study on college students of today and found that they are 40% lower in empathy. A species cannot and will not survive without empathy. And so what they are doing is they are altering the DNA, which they've done for many times before. And
this kind of gets me into the question, and again, for those of you who just popped in, we're talking to Nancy Tremaine, who had her first ET contact in Novi, Michigan back in 1961, and is the author of Symbiosis and her newest book, Preordained. Nancy, you kind of, we talked really, well, you mentioned really briefly, as we kind of skimmed over it, that you were pregnant with a hybrid.
Yes,
So tell me a little bit about, tell me everything about that. A little bit about it. I want to know everything.
Well, some of it's pretty X-rated, so it's in the book.
Okay, yeah, we'll move past that part.
I'll be able to tell you about that. Because
leave it for the imagination of the listener, yes.
In 2012, I met a man, someone I would never normally be attracted to. I'm a sapiosexual, which means I'm attracted and always have been to intelligent men. And that wasn't nice. I just said that.
That's okay.
He wasn't someone that I would normally be attracted to, but there was a sexual chemistry between the two of us that was unbelievable. He was a prison guard at the time, 6'6", 200, he said 250. I think he was closer to 300, and I'm 5'3", 105 on a good day. So we made a very unlikely couple. But the sex kept us together. Anyway, a month after I met him, I was 62 years old and I was pregnant. And he said, "What's going on?" My stomach. I work out all the time. If you could see my cash, my living room. It's exercise equipment, free weights, Pilates machines, hula hoop. I work out almost every day. I walk. Speed walk. And he said, "What's going on with your stomach?" Well, what had happened was during sex, the words came out of my mouth. I don't know where they came from. And I said, "I'm pregnant and it's a boy." And sure enough, my stomach started to grow after that. And as tiny as I am, it showed right away. My mother would often tease. She said, it's like putting an olive in a tube. And I said, I'm pregnant. And he humored me. And I was at my best friend Tom's, the lawyer, and he said, what is up with your stomach? And I lifted my shirt and I said, I'm pregnant. And he said, well, you better stop being pregnant.
That's how that works.
That's how that but he knew I was. And he even wrote a validating email to one of the radio hosts telling him that he had seen me, even though he knew it was impossible. I'd had a tubal ligation, and I was 62 years old, and I went through my change of life in my late 30s. I was lucky. 38, 39, I'd gone through my change of life. But yet I was pregnant. And what happened is I woke up on April 15th, and I had morning sickness and you're only pregnant for 2.5, 3 months when you're pregnant with a hybrid. And I knew the name of my son. They'd given me his name as Drax. When I woke up April 15th, which happens to be tax day, this is a sense of humor they have here in the United States, because the tax write-off, I said, oh, geez, you can't make this stuff up. My stomach was flat, and I felt empty. And I knew that I wasn't going to be caring for Drax, I knew that he belonged to them. And I asked them, whenever I ask them a question, I usually get an answer. Not when I want it. I want a question. I want the answer now. But I asked them first, how did they get me pregnant? And I was shown an image of a large bowl and a spoon making mixing motions. And I was to understand that Drax was a combination of me, Sid, which stands for someone I dated, and Mr. And I was taken on board to see my son, and he was being held by a female, and I recognized her right away as mine. She was a caregiver for Drax, and her name was Faylene. And it was another false pregnancy that I'd had in the late 80s. And ironically, that baby disappeared also. And she wanted me to hold Drax. And even though he was swaddled in a blanket, I could tell that he wasn't what I expected. He had this large head and a hunched back, and I was mad. I felt tricked. And I was put back. And then I felt awful, and I cried, and I begged them to please let me see my son again, and I promised if they did that I would love him. And I was told by Mr. Drax is exactly as he is meant to be. He is a loving and gentle being. He is a thinker, a judge of sorts, as every society needs judges. He will make many wise decisions.
Okay.
See, some of the messages are locked in my mind, and they always come out, the same.
You get information as you sleep. One of the things you wrote in sleep state was realities or illusions are part of the delusion we have created.
I would love it.
Living a delusional illusion of our making. We are all players in a fictional theater. We are performing for our creators. The stage is set at birth, and our performance has begun.
Absolutely. And I hang on to those words for 12 days because it was way over my head. But next to those words was a circle. And inside the circle, I'd written the words consciousness, sound, light, energy. And I was made to understand that circle depicted the womb that gave birth to humanity. And then in parentheses were written the words, the what is. And I now understand that the what is God or the cosmic mind.
Sorry, Nancy, one more time. What was written in the circle?
The words consciousness, sound, light, love, energy, all of those words. And I understood that was the womb, that it was the depiction of the womb that gave birth to humanity, which is still really deep. So I ended up sharing my words with Grant Cameron and Kevin Estrella. And Kevin Estrella ended up a quantum physicist. I'd never even heard of a quantum physicist, if that tells you anything, had written to Kevin Estrella wanting my email. He had questions for me. And he's published over 700 scientific papers, and I can't understand half of what he writes me, just about any of it. But I shared my realities or illusions with him, and he got back to me right away. And he said that what I had written in a sleep state was compatible with the words of a man by the name of Paul Brunton, who I'd never heard of, a.k.a. Raphael Hurst, who was a best-selling author, a spiritualist, a yogi, and he believed in communication with the divine. And his words gave me the title for my book. These are the words that Paul Brunton had written, quote, "The world pattern is preordained. It is written out like a stage play. The author is God." Brunton himself saw himself as a puppet being manipulated, and he states that every instant is preordained by the past as well as by the plan. Even our freedom of will is preordained. Not only do we affect those whose lives come in contact with ours, but those lives that seem too remote are unlinked to ours. There are unseen filaments connecting man with nature, man with destiny, and man with man, end quote.
And that's one of the things that in interviewing a lot of people, primarily interviewing psychics and those also with connections to things like elemental beings and speaking of multidimensional beings, that everything is connected and energy is all the same. A friend of mine right now is fascinated with the ability to bend cutlery, like fork bend and spoon bend. And she said it's really easy once you realize that nothing is solid and everything is energy and we're all the same energy. So her energy of her hands is the exact same energy that is in the spoon. And it's all fluid. There's nothing that is solid. And as soon as she gets that in her head, then she can bend the spoon. And I'm looking at it thinking, my God, what do you mean by that? That 2 or 3 sentences means so much on a global level.
Absolutely.
But she focuses it to herself by just bending a piece of cutlery. So it's fascinating, and to look at who we are as a species, connected to other species, connected to trees, connected to rocks, whatever.
Everything.
It is fascinating, and the more we understand that, the closer with one another we really should be. Not only with one another, but the planet we exist on.
And once we open ourselves up, once we're truly opened to anything like the messages that I receive and the images that they give me, you get more and more and more, and you become, I was told, I'm a participant now. In Preordained, on page 54, I wrote in October of 2016, Words to heed is what it said. And here's what I wrote. This is 4 years ago. I said, I feel impending doom. Mother Earth's soil is absorbing negative energy. It's like a simmering stew ready to boil over. I can smell anger and fear. I see an image of Putin gazing down of us pompously and smugly. He is gazing down at Americans running aimlessly in a state of panic. We are very vulnerable, and the world sees this. We are exposed. We are not the great and powerful Oz that we portray ourselves to be. There is such a divide of the masses. God help us.
Yeah, that's a little bit on the powerful and the prophetic side of things, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what's going on right now.
I look at even COVID as something that the earth needed at that time.
I love that you said that. Yes.
Yeah, the cleansing of... I was telling people to get out and go for a walk and breathe because the air hasn't been this clean for 100 years.
Exactly. Yes, animals.
We had bird... I'm on a migratory bird route here on the Pacific Northwest on the coast. Mm-hmm. We had 2 species of birds that hadn't flown over this area since the 1930s.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
Because they would bypass this area because of pollution, but the pollution wasn't there.
Yes, I love
so I look at it was, here's where I get into, this is my controversy that I deal with every day, is the people who died in which created the need to turn off everything, to shut things down, for the governments to actually man up and flip the switch. Those people died, and this is my belief, is that they came into this life knowing that at this time they were going to leave as soldiers fighting the good cause. They gave their lives so the earth could breathe at this time.
You are so right. That's beautiful. Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So how many people had to die before the governments globally took it seriously to flip the switch? Well, there had to be a number, and that number had to be reached. And the majority of the people were in the last parts of their life anyway. Mm-hmm. So they said, I'll check out now because it's going to be good for the planet. Mm-hmm. So they did. But, most of us laying back going, well, grandmother died or grandfather died, I feel really bad about it. But those are people who don't understand that we don't really die. There is no end.
Exactly.
We are just energy that moves on to our next, where we're supposed to go. And it's a good death. They died for a cause. The greatest cause is the earth having a break.
Yes.
And hopefully more people realize that it's obvious that we are affecting the planet, because when we shut off, it's obvious that the planet came back. So you can't say, oh no, it's just, the cycle of the weather or something like that. No, dude, look, we shut down for 3 months. This is what happened. Mm-hmm. We had clean water. We had birds coming back. We had dolphins coming back to the canals of Venice. You could see the bottom of standing on the canals. And now I'm sure right now they've started up all the gas-powered boats in the canals, and it's going to get polluted again. But at least we were given the opportunity to see that we have an effect on the place we live, and that we're connected. That's how connected we are as humans to it. So
beautifully said. They're just beautiful. Yes. Thank you, James. That was beautiful.
Now, when you're dealing, here's me getting my UFO hat back on again, or my ET hat on. You're dealing with reptilians. There are a number of different reptilians. There's black ones and brown ones and green ones and things like that. Which group do you know? Actually, which group you were dealing with?
I've only seen Mr. So I don't know. I drew a picture of him, and he's in the book. Or the collective. Is the collective the reptilians? I don't know. I think it's the collective mind. In fact, I'll have to take you back to an incident that happened in October of 2015 when I was on board ship. Mr. was in energy form, and he took me to the lower level of the ship. And you have to understand that I know nothing about the computer. I wrote the first beginnings of both my books in Google Compose, in the drafts, saving it, because I don't know anything about the computer. So when we got to the lower level of the ship, all it is, from floor to ceiling, is computer chipboard. It's all it is. And it's separated into several sections, and it's manned by a different angelic being. And they all look exactly alike. The angelic being that greeted us had white wings. They were angels. And I said to Mr., what are they? Angels? They all have wings. And I could feel his humor when he gives me messages or we communicate. We feel each other's, it's more than telepathic, it's the emotions are shared completely. He said, ask them. So when I turned to the angelic being that had greeted us, that I actually thought was expecting us, he said, we are benevolent beings here to help save the planet. If this makes us angels, then we are. And the reason that they were all looked exactly alike is they were letting me see, because I was to understand that they were all different species of beings, but they were showing themselves as all exactly alike because they were all working together in harmony, something we don't do here. And there was no one-upmanship. Everybody, it was just love. And the energy in that room was a vibrational energy of love and positivity, and you don't, it doesn't exist here on this planet, so I can't explain it, but I didn't want to leave that room. But before I was put back, they gave me a gigantic download. They just filled my head, and I was immediately made to write everything down. And what they had shown me, and they had shown me this vision of it looked like twisted threads or fibers, and that's all I could see in my vision. And a tweezer came down and took one of the threads out. And as it was taking it out, I was told, or made to understand, that they were showing me the alternation of DNA.
Yeah, that makes sense then, because they're showing you the twisted double helix. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And how it's being affected.
And then they showed me the past, present, and future. That's where I got that from. The circle within a circle within a circle. The smallest circle has a heart in the middle, and I was told that this is the heart of the universe. And the second circle, larger, has the word love in it. And I was told humans are always chasing the tail of love. And the largest circle had the words past, present, and future. And I was to understand that they all exist simultaneously. All of it at once. You know, I'm still trying to process all the information that I get.
Oh yeah, it's to me it would be overwhelming and coming in waves like it has been through your life to get information from beings that are so advanced, and trying to process it through our, I almost said monkey brains, but we are playing catch up right now. And there are people like you around the planet that are having access to this information. And it's almost like it's planting the seed. In your lifetime, will you see the seed germinate and start to grow? I don't know.
Oh, it's growing all the time.
Yeah. Is it another generation from now where that light switch flips on for more and more people? But more and more people are, quote unquote, awakening to understanding that there are differences in vibration. There are those people we call, and I always use the term empath because it's a generic term I use for a higher vibration human. But there are more and more people of that vibration understanding, oh, that's me. And I look at people now, since 2012, is I've had the ability to look at somebody and see it in a photograph or in real life and go, oh, they're one of us. And I say to you, and they say, well, I don't believe in that stuff. And I said, well, you still wake up between 3 and 4:30 in the morning. What? How did you know that? Well, have you ever seen shadows in your bedroom when you were a kid? Yeah. Do you know you're dreaming while you're dreaming? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's a dictionary definition of a lucid dream. That's only us. That's 24 to 26% of the population. There was a thing nobody's actually studied that said what's the percentage of empaths. Well, it's like accounting water. It's like you can't. It doesn't make any sense. But they have done a lot of studies on lucid dreaming. And depending on whose study you read, it's 24 to up to 29% of the population. But I've yet to meet an empath who doesn't lucid dream, and I've yet to meet a person who lucid dreams who is not an empath. So conversely, I just say, yeah, only empaths lucid dream.
Yeah, when you can tell someone, when you're dreaming and you say, hey, I'm in a dream.
Yeah, and people think lucid dreaming is all flying unicorns and rainbow farts and stuff like that. No, it's not. It's just knowing you're dreaming while you're dreaming. And funny, Nick, when we were kids, and this is another thing we do, is in our dreams, we could have this great dream, wake up, go to the bathroom, come back, press play, and start again. That's only us. Yeah, that's an empath thing. Yeah. And that's me pounding my shoe on the table about empaths. But these people are beginning to awaken. And one of the divinations I was told, or like I got from psychics, were saying, your job is to point out these things to people, let them digest it and plant that seed. So if it's trying to get people to awaken to understand. And what I mean by awaken is to understand that is who they are and maybe do a little bit of research in it. And that's why you're an empathic person or have empathy. This is why you're in a career choice that is a maid, a butler, a waitress, a waiter, a chef, an artist, a teacher, a nurse. You're in a career that helps people. And that's what makes you feel good. You're in a helping career because our connection with mankind and our fellow men is to help each other as one group. So this has been going on more and more in the last 15 to 20 years. People, we've had, this person's a star child or that person's an indigo or whatever. It's just a whole bunch of little awakenings because those seeds have been planted all over the planet and they need to get going now because of basically what we're doing to the planet and wake our asses up. Yeah. And people like you who have had experience and things like this have been pointed out by other groups. Now, when you talk about this group, these groups that work on craft, it reminds me of like the Federation of Planets that are everybody got together to help. So they're from all different dimensions and planets and universes and all got together to come down and give us a hand because we're being idiots with our planet. And it sounds like a whole bunch of good and pure beings working on behalf of helping.
Exactly. And I just a few days ago, playing on a computer, and I heard an experiencer mention something about the angelic 9, and I was like, "What? Angelic 9?" And then I'm thinking, how many how many angels were on the ship? You know, and I'm trying to think of the divisions where they were each standing in their own section. And
they talk also about there's some people talk about realms of angels. There's 9 realms.
Yeah,
There's 9 angelic realms. So, and they're all different levels, from a regular angel that kind of hangs out with you to the archangels and these are all broken down into almost, you can point out various religions and their belief system in whatever angel is what.
And Linda Moulton Howe mentioned when we spoke on the phone that there are people in the military that have seen these angelic beings, and she's spoken with other experiencers that haven't come forward. So they do exist. These angelic beings are real.
Oh yeah, people see, people who are gifted with seeing them will see them.
Well, I want to tell you what they told me. This was another thing that I was told while I would to bring back with me. I call it collecting souvenirs. When they give me information, they're souvenirs to me. They said that they travel as different sizes, shapes, and colors of orbs, rods, and ships, but that they are all light knowledge energy. No matter what form they travel in, whether it's a vehicle or a triangle ship or an orb or as a being, an alien, whatever the person needs to see. I don't need to see them in physical form anymore. So for me, they're just a knowing now, or a message, or
because we're connected.
Yes.
So it's just a thought.
Yes.
And you think, gee, what did I just think of that? And then you go, oh no,
I
was gifted that. I talked to an artist, a young woman named Akiane Krameric, who at the age of 5 said she was visited by Jesus and taken up into the sky and told all sorts of things. And she grew up in an atheist family, no television, no radio, no Bible. And when she walked out of the bedroom and told her mother that, her mother's like, where did you get that name? And she described the being, they described the person, and at the age of 8 painted his picture, and it was called The Prince of Peace. And she was painting at a level at the age of 8 of a master. She was a genius. She's actually a binary genius.
I have seen her work. Yes.
Yeah. She of course is interviewed on 100 Huntley Street and Good Morning America and things. And then I got a hold of her and said, so when you paint, how does it come through you? And she said, it's almost like I'm watching somebody else do it. So she's channeling.
Yes.
And again, she's very protected, still very protected. Her family kind of keep her isolated in a way. And she said, and I said, well, this is, a weird question for you, but have you ever lost any time? And she paused and said, yeah, I remember losing about 10 hours. And she went to lay down in her bedroom, and when she got up and came out in the hallway, the police and the FBI, everybody was there, and they're staring at her saying, where have you been?
Wow.
And she said, no, I lay down in my room. And they said, no, you weren't in your room. You've been gone for 10 hours. And she said, well, I had one of my dreams where the light beings take me up into the sky. And I said, light beings? And she goes, yeah, that's what I call them. And I said, that's what everyone calls them. That is those beings. And she described them as angelic light beings that were like family. And I said, yeah, they probably are family.
Yes.
And you're connected. And she's actually painted a picture of our universe or our solar system from a point in the universe that you'd have to be there to look at it from that angle. And there was no pictures from satellites. She just painted it. I was going to say freehand.
Yes.
But she said, this is what I saw. And it was exact. And astronomers are going, yeah, you would have to be out on a ship from that, or out there looking down at our solar system through the universe to see it on that angle. So how did you do this? She says, that's what I remembered when I was out with my light being friends. And taken out into space kind of thing. And I pointed out to her that there were a lot of people like her that actually traveled like that and had been, and we talked about being possibly on craft or how she leaves. But it was funny when she said that she had lost the 10 hours. It wasn't like she did an out-of-body travel. Like her body was physically gone. She was gone. And the police were called. Mm-hmm. And of course, they were dumbfounded when she showed up, literally rubbing her eyes, walking out of her bedroom after her nap, which was 10 hours long. And she was in her dream, quote unquote dream, she was traveling through space. So, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm pretty sure her parents aren't going to let me talk to her again. But because I wasn't talking about, oh, you paint so well and you do all this and God and angels and things. And it was all, oh, so they're ETs and these are light beings. And but she was actually giddy. She'd be about 24 now, 24, 25 yet. But she was giddy to realize that she wasn't the only one that had these experiences.
Probably so protected by her parents for so long.
Oh yeah, and the other thing too is the poor kid. She is a genius in poetry and art and painting, but she's also been told by the light beings that she will lose her ability to paint. But the poetry will continue and the writing will continue. So she's comforting, has a bit of comfort that eventually she won't be able to do that anymore because that time of her life and that reason for painting is moving on to something bigger.
Her mission will be completed, that mission anyways. Yeah.
And so she will move on to something else. So she's a very important person in again, what's coming, whatever that's going to be.
Absolutely, yeah.
And which brings me back to reptilians. There is talk in the woo-woo community about a culling of humanity. Those who are of very low vibration are going to, they're going to get fired. Off they go. And it's either the earth is going to do it itself through upheaval or something's going to step in and take people. Have you been given any information or?
I was given a vision, and I was told that it is a universal vision, and I was given this vision in 2015. It was placed in my head the way they do, and I drew a picture of it, and I'm standing amid the sky is lit up, just lit up with every ship and orb of every shape, size, and color that you can imagine. And my feeling is so deep. I'm filled with gratitude. And I keep saying, thank you, I love you. So are they coming to get me? I don't know. One of the messages that I was given was, our messages are not for everyone. Many will be left behind. And when I got that message, that was one of my very first messages. I didn't think they meant it literally. But I was told years later, no, this is literally. Many will be left behind. These are the people that have not awakened, and they're never going to awaken. And I believe that timeline doesn't exist any longer for the newbies to awaken. This is 2020. It's all done. So the awakened ones, either we're going to go, because this planet does need to be cleansed. It needs to be cleansed.
The weird one I have, and this is from another ET experiencer who's been taught on craft. Mm-hmm. She's been, and again, she's had the 3.5 month pregnancies and gone to see her children and things like this. And I'm not going to mention her name because she was afraid to come out and say this out loud. But she'd been taken by the black reptilians to their planet, and she saw where they lived, and the water was a very big thing for them. Like if you had a garden in front of your house with lush plants, that showed you were affluent because you could waste water on growing plants. But she saw areas, what were called the meat markets, where the things that those reptilians were eating were actually human. And she said that a deal was struck that if we don't get our collective poop together and we start screwing up this planet, those who are not awakened were going to be taken. And she was shown vision. She was sitting in a van with her children, and the reptilian was driving the van. And he said, "You just guys wait here." And she was watching her neighbors being taken out and put in these large glass containers and sprayed with this reddish brown substance to disinfect them. And off they went. And this was happening at a global level. And the deal was, now if you want to go back to biblical times, was this snake in the Garden of Eden actually a reptilian? And was the deal made back then? Because she said things like archangels aren't going to step in to help you. You're like, the deal was made. And it was because we only had one job. We had one rule. The golden rule. Do unto others as we'd have them do unto us. Mm-hmm. And we screwed that one up. Those people who aren't awakened were going to be taken off planet. That was the deal that was made, and there would be a percentage left to look after things. Now, I had a show with a guy named Gregory Passman, who's a psychic who also does channeling, and the Archangel Michael came through, and I kind of indirectly asked him about that, and he said, we are shown those things because they are taken almost like a prophecy, but the only reason we are shown, given those views into what could happen, is that we have a collective consciousness that we haven't tapped into, and that we can actually change the outcome. Yes. So will that happen? It's going to be up to us.
Because we create our reality. Yes.
Now, this was psychic number one. Psychic number two, completely different person. I happened to say, hey, you heard anything about reptilians and people being taken? And she's, what do you know? And I said, well, this is what I heard. And she said, yeah, that's what I heard too, from her reptilian contacts. And then I had a friend of mine who said, I had a dream, and she's another Royal Canadian Mounted Police who's an intuitive. She said, I had this weird dream. I was actually remote viewing a remote viewer in a place called Concrete, Washington, where they were trying to interfere with reptilians taking people and putting them into glass boxes. And they were trying to interfere with the way that those people were being picked. And I said, what? Where did you get this? And she goes, that was a dream I had. What do you think? And I said, oh, you have to talk to Psychic A and Psychic B. And I said, are you sure Concrete, Washington? And she said, yeah. And I said, okay, you've got to talk to Skeeter Wellhouse. She used to do remote viewing with a group out of Concrete, Washington. I got a couple of the pictures of the people who run the group, and I sent it to my friend, and she goes, oh, that's the guy I was remote viewing. And the guy she picked was the head of the group in Concrete, Washington, as a remote viewing. It was the most bizarre thing, and this was all in the last 3 or 4 months. Again, I've been kind of concerned about this, but when I understand that we do have the power as humanity to get our collective poop together, this may not happen. It's just trying to get focused on doing unto others as we'd have them do unto us, opening ourselves up to be more empathetic to fellow man, but not only to man. Like you say, we're all connected. We are the earth. We are all here. So not only am I going to be more loving to my fellow man, but I'm also going to be loving to the earth under my feet. So hopefully we can bypass that whole culling and being off to a food market, the meat market somewhere on a foreign planet. But those are the black reptilians. That's why I was asking you which reptilian you ran into.
Yeah, no, I've never had any negative experiences with the reptilians or the collective mind. I can't even comprehend that. And I distance myself from, like I said, I'll never do any documentary or anything where they're playing scary music in the background to a documentary, and then this, oh my God, some of these shows. I understand reptilians are very just like humans. There's a whole bunch of different ones, different races. They are scientists, doctors, researchers, geneticists, teachers, and watching over our evolution. They've been doing it for 240,000 years. They created us. This is my belief, and my belief only, but yes, I believe they created.
When you look at there's so many other civilizations on this planet that have disappeared, and we find like remains of them. We're going, well, maybe it was these people or that people, or they're just ruins out of stone in the Philippines or Thailand or something that people are guessing on. it was like 20,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. We don't know when this was built, and we have no idea of the population that did it. So how many times have things been started and then going, yeah, it's not working. We're going to have to shut this one off and start again somewhere else. Interesting.
That's where your past, present, and future are all simultaneous. It's just
with an educated guess. What do you think's going to happen?
Well, one of the things I don't do is talk politics, but we're in trouble.
Well,
we are in so much trouble. Yeah.
But we're supposed to be in trouble, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
it's our fault.
I looked at it like in 2014 when we talked about politicians globally been put in positions of power that would bring their individual countries, basically split them in half, us against them, and it'll bring the world to almost a breaking point, the tip of a war. It's because we had to wake up and pay attention. People politically had been sitting on their hands since the 60s and letting things just continue, and all of a sudden something happened. It's like, oh, hold on, I think they'll have to get involved again and start looking at, what do you mean you're opening up the parks, federal parks, for mining and fracking and things like that? Or in Brazil, what do you mean you're going to burn down the Amazon? Like, now I'm paying attention to you.
Yes. This is Mother Earth's way of saying, respect me, show me some respect.
And then to get back into the whole COVID and whatever else is going to happen coming up as a spin-off on that. And again, we've got, severe weather and fires. And I'm waiting for a solar flare to knock out all the electrical. So
the world's gone mad. It really.
Yeah. Let's put it this way: instead of saying the world's gone mad, the world is mad.
The world is mad. Yes.
Yeah. It's very angry with what's going on, and if it's a lot bigger than us, and when it gets mad, it could really hurt things. So, one little shake, and we could be all flying off the planet. In your books, you've got your two. You've got the Preordained is the newest one. Yes. It's out, and if anyone's looking for it, you could just Google Nancy Tremaine and Preordained.
Yeah, they're both on Amazon and Kindle. And
they're on Kindle.
Grant Cameron published, Sir Grant Cameron published Symbiosis, and Philip Mantle published Preordained.
Oh, good. Well, maybe Philip's going to be knighted too then. It's like if Sir Grant Cameron did the Symbiosis, then maybe that's why Philip jumped on it, because he wanted to be knighted. I'm kidding, because I know Philip. Preordained is your autobiography of your past, present, and the ongoing life events that are coming in now. And I noticed you quoted the late Jim Mars, who I've interviewed, and I always say to him, like, when he passed, one of the things I thought of is like, oh, finally, he now knows the answers. I was happy for him to pass. I was sad that he passed, but I was happy that he did, because he had so many questions while he was here, and I'm sure like an hour and a half later he went, oh, that's what happened. Those are the guys who did it. That's what happened to JFK. That's what kind of spaceship. Oh, I saw. So it was nice that you quote him.
I wish I could have met him, and I wish I could have met Dr. John Mack. Same birthday as him, exactly 20 years younger, but I just adore Dr. John Mack.
I'm tickled that you dropped by here today.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, and it wasn't as stressful as you thought.
No.
Oh, yeah, it was. But it's okay. I'm relatively nice to hang out with.
Yes, you are. Yes.
And hope to maybe come back and bug you again one day.
I would love that. Yes.
And we can talk a little bit more about, actually we'll talk about, mostly the stuff we talked about is in Preordained, your new book. But Symbiosis, that's fascinating, what happened at the beginning. It's amazing. I know
we could get into a lot of the stuff that we didn't cover. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll do that again. Again, we've been talking to Nancy Tremaine. Please go look her up. Do you have a website yet? No, you don't know how to use a computer. Hold on.
Anybody can write me at tremaine.nancy@gmail.com, and I will get back to them. I'm on Facebook.
Okay, we'll hit you up on Facebook.
I got lots
the
of
Facebook. Good. We'll hit you up there. Again,
Yes.
Nancy Tremaine. Go to Amazon, check out her book, Symbiosis and Preordained, her newest one. If you're interested in the UFO question, which if you're listening to this, you definitely are interested in that. So please, I recommend you get one of those books, or actually get both of them, because it fit great into your ufology library. It's wonderful to have you, Nancy. Thanks very much.
Thank you, James.
Watching you while you sleep all alone.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.